I'm very interested to hear what Sam has got to say. I'll introduce Sam Stacey, Transformation Director at UKRI. And he's going to talk to us about, well, he's a construction industry leader and writer on construction innovation, so he knows what he's talking about. Since 2018, he's been the Challenge Director for Construction at UKRI, implementing Sector Deal for Construction as part of the UK's 2017 Industrial Strategy. He's got an MBA, that's proper, from Henley Business School and degrees in Civil Engineering, Architecture and Philosophy from Imperial College, which is a proper university, and Cambridge. I hate him now. I really liked you when I first met you, but now you're too clever. It's too annoying. So, sorry, Sam, because I'm really excited to hear you. So please welcome Sam Stacey and his keynote speech today. Thank you.
Thank you, Robert, and good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. So, as Robert said, yes, 3 years ago, I took on this, frankly, very daunting challenge of using £170 million of taxpayers' money to improve the construction industry. And at that time, we had a commitment from industry to match fund that with £250 million of their own money. And 3 years down the line, I can honestly say I feel tremendously confident that we can achieve the aims that we've set out to achieve. We've got government procurement already signed up to adopt about £13 billion worth of construction according to our new principles. We've got this fantastic portfolio of projects that demonstrates that not only is this feasible, not only can we achieve these targets that I was given, but there seem to be a lot of business opportunities in the process of doing that. So, to be specific about what the ask was, and bearing in mind, that we're looking at an industry that has had a terrible time with low profit margins. The ask was to reduce whole life cost of buildings by 33%. To double the speed at which construction assets are delivered, to halve the carbon emissions from the built environment, to achieve a 50% increase in the export balance with regards to construction, and to significantly improve productivity. And we won't have achieved that for the entire industry in this time, but what I think we've set the industry on a path to is achieving that with a bit of a runway. And as much as anything, my pitch here today and my pitch that I'm shouting about to the industry is get on board with all these things. They do work. It's it really makes sense, and we've really addressed how to do it. Now, in the 3 years that I've been doing this, the landscape and the emphasis has changed, and the one thing that has come particularly to the fore is carbon emissions, and that's why it's particularly great to be here at the Active Building Centre, where we've got these practical examples all around us to look at. And the client bodies are really enthusiastic about this, let's say. They are, we have no doubt that clients are wanting good environmentally conscious solutions now. So the challenge to the industry is to get ahead of the game, not be dragged, not be kind of have what are your solutions in terms of carbon emissions dragged out of the suppliers, but the opportunity is for the suppliers to learn from what we've done and really get ahead of the game. And out there in the wider world, you've got a massive recognition of this. Larry Fink, who is Chief Executive of BlackRock, has written this year to it's incredible, $9 trillion worth of assets that BlackRock control or have an influence over, to say it's absolutely imperative that you focus on ESG goals for your businesses. So it's a whole different world out there. The zeitgeist is different, and right down in the nuts and bolts, where we are today with the ABC, we've got some solutions to these things. I mean, it's a wonderful position to be in. So the message to the industry, and that's really clients, suppliers, everyone involved, is, now's the time to wake up to these opportunities, to learn about them, to get your heads around what we can do, and change the business strategy to adopt these things. So what I'm talking about here is scaling a manufacturing approach, a standardization approach to the built environment, deploy digital and data-driven processes, so massive increase in the digital, and embed this whole life value approach. Not this go for the cheapest, try and push down capital costs, but go for the whole life value approach to procuring and delivering built environment assets. And what the Transforming Construction Challenge has done, I believe, is laid the foundations for this. So we've defined what we mean by the value and platform approach. We've proven these methods across a significant portfolio of demonstrator projects, and in the process upskilled and brought confidence to a lot of organisations in the industry. Specifically, as it happens, there are 142 commercial organisations that have received funding as part of the challenge, and a number, probably another 200 or so, who've been involved in some capacity in the programme. So there's a lot of people and organisations that have been aware of what we're doing, and at the same time we've got this shift in public procurement. So having worked as a contractor for many years, and I was innovation director at Skanska for a few years, what I know is that if the clients want something, you jump. I mean, that's what you react to. That is the lifeblood. And you've got the biggest client in the industry by far in the form of the public sector demanding that we do things differently. So there is absolute confidence there, or there should be absolute confidence that there is that demand side pull for these techniques. So in the process of this, as I say, we've defined the value approach and the platform approach. And what we mean by the value approach is helping clients to make really balanced decisions that take into account the financial returns on what they're doing, but also take into account the environmental effects of the building, the social effects of how we're procuring the building, and helping the natural capital associated with projects. So it's a value toolkit that's been created that enables clients to work through. We're not telling them what to do, but saying, this is the framework to enable you to make balanced and reasoned decisions about what you're procuring. And then alongside that, we've defined the platform rulebook and essentially taken what so far medium-sized buildings, so your schools, hospitals, office blocks and so forth, and define them as a set of parts, a kit of parts, 13 parts as it happens, define the standard interfaces between those parts and what we expect from each component, each section of a building, and provided configuration guidelines to bring that all together. So what we hope there is that we achieve the maximum standardization and the benefits of standardization from the industry, but also enable people to innovate, as it were, within those parts, to come up with the most innovative and effective cladding systems and floor plates and structural solutions and so forth. So more than anything, we want to free up the capacity to innovate rather than be in any way an impediment to innovation. And I talked about the portfolio of demonstrator projects that we've got. So it's about 51 demonstrator projects that we've funded. And within that, we've got examples of digital twins, tagging and tracking components through the industry, through the construction process. Hyperpile is one of the examples of our projects, which you'll see upstairs, where you capture energy from the pile to help provide green energy to the building and so forth. So a whole range of solutions that sort of probe all the aspects of what we're trying to achieve here. And active building technology is, probably at the forefront of that. So with the Active Building Centre, we've got testing, validation, configuration of clean energy technology. And that was what was missing in the market. We had people who could advise on what was theoretically possible. We've had people who've got products. But what we needed was an entity like the Active Building Centre to put together all these components, tweak it all, see what works, and be able to offer solutions to clients to optimize all these technologies for their benefit. And already we've got a couple of examples of that. So with Flintshire County Council, with Connor Key Housing Development, we've been able to provide solutions that almost eliminate or potentially actually completely eliminate and provide a cost back to the customer in terms of the energy costs, just by doing intelligent things, just by configuring the technology in the right way. So no increase in capital costs and more or less an elimination of energy bills. Actually a fantastic solution. And here at the Active Building Centre, we'll be developing continued technologies to optimise these things. So huge potential with regards to energy storage, looking at, say, energy density equivalent to a lithium-ion battery, but with chemicals, phase change materials and thermochemical materials. Steam storage of energy is another solution here. Heat pump technology, it's looking like we can achieve a 67% improvement in the efficiency of heat pumps here at the Active Building Centre. So already we've got this basis whereby we can go out to the likes of the Flintshire example and say, look, we could make a thoroughly cost-effective intervention and get you what you want. And there's all this potential to go further with it as well. We've been piloting this kit-of-parts approach to buildings with a big developer called Landsec as well. And most people will be aware of Landsec. So we call it the Automated Construction Project at the Forge in London. Just under £100 million office block, made according to a kit of parts. It's nearly complete at the moment. Massive reductions in energy associated with that, reductions in capital cost, huge improvement on the standard tolerances with regards to that building, which will make maintenance and fit out and all these things related to the building so much more efficient. So again, tangible examples to show the world that actually, it's not crazy, it's not going to be more expensive. Go and look at it, touch it, feel it, it really does work. And if you've got big names like Landsec behind it, you don't get more sort of hard-nosed and commercial than that. If they're backing it, then, clearly it makes sense. Similarly, with regards to housing, big project with Barratt Homes and L&Q, the social landlord. Again, pattern books for houses, standardised approaches, and in a way, not surprisingly, massive reduction in programme time, a runway through to reduced costs, massive improvement in environmental performance of these houses. So big players really getting behind this, really collecting the data and proving that it can be done. I mentioned Hyperpile already. I do urge people to go and have a look at this. Piles have not changed. The design of piles hasn't changed really for about the last 50 years, I believe. And yet, Keltbray, in association with the Active Building Centre, are using piles to harvest energy from the ground, taking concrete out of it, so helping with the embodied carbon in that sense, using precasting, They've got this special technique to increase skin friction on the edge of the piles with indentations. Really clever approaches, which in this case, will help the carbon emissions in terms of the embodied carbon. And a project led by Skanska that I should mention that's being piloted on HS2. So that's a tool to assess the embodied carbon in a design as you go along and as much as possible reduce that. And one of the interesting findings from that is as they're applying that tool, in this case on HS2, to reduce embodied carbon, they're finding that they're actually pulling costs out of the project as well. So again, sort of challenging this assumption that going green is a more costly enterprise. In so many cases, it's not. I talked about the shift in public procurement. So in December last year, the government published the Construction Playbook, which was basically a whole new approach to procurement of the schools, hospitals, transport, infrastructure and so forth that the government procures, mandating that modern methods of construction, all the things I've been describing, will be procured from the supply chain. So there's nowhere to run for the laggards in the industry. If you want to get work with the government, that's what you've got to do. I mean, I think that's a massive step forward. Since then, there's been more detail added and more guidance in the form of Transforming Infrastructure Performance Roadmap for 2030 that was published about a month ago, I think. So there's more detail there. The RIBA, Royal Institute of British Architects, have published guidance on how to apply these approaches from the point of view of architects. So wherever there are potential barriers, wherever facilitation and tools are needed, we've tried to sort of provide the answers. And again, part of that is piloting it on actual projects. So we've got a big pilot project called the TIES Living Lab project with the Department of Transport, standardising a portfolio of different assets, one of which is footbridges. Again, similar sorts of really, really positive metrics coming out of that. I think in the case of footbridges, carbon emissions are going to be reduced by 50 or 60%. Lower costs. There's a hell of a lot of these things to go in, either replacing existing bridges across the estate or associated with a new asset such as HS2. We've got a project called Challenging Space Frontiers in Hospitals, so looking at how we specifically apply these techniques to the modern methods of construction techniques to hospitals by drawing on the space industry. In hospitals, the challenge is you've got this incredibly complex technology, particularly in operating theatres, and you need to work out how to sort of incorporate that in a modern methods of manufacturing way within buildings. So lots of organisations involved in that, and again, sort of proof that you can apply these techniques to all sectors. Finally, to mention our Gen Zero project with schools. So standard schools, basically two sort of paradigm site conditions, an urban site condition and a rural site condition. And in that case, it's a computer program, generative design. You put in your parameters, the size of the school, the requirements for the school, and it will automatically generate a compliant net zero school building that can then be put out to the supply chain to deliver. So really practical examples that clients and suppliers can pick up and run with. So I think we're in a great position. I think we've really laid the foundations for the change to happen in the construction industry. We're seeing a lot of that change happen already. And the main thing really is to enthusiastically get on the bus, to get involved in what is about £35 billion worth of public sector procurement, to take up the challenge provided by the big developers like Landsec to deliver along these lines, to adopt the net zero principles that in particular the Construction Leadership Council has laid out in their Construct Zero document, and head off into a world that frankly will be a lot more comfortable and sustainable to live in, and I think an industry that will be much more enjoyable and satisfying place to work as well. So, thank you. That's me.
Thank you very much. Great stuff, Sam. That was fascinating and really, really optimistic, which is really encouraging. It was not because I started out today in the right old state, being really miserable about the building industry. I've cheered up a bit, but I mean, one of the things that intrigues me is I understand and have seen and witnessed houses that are not necessarily energy negative, but really, really low fuel bills. But if they're built right, if they're passive houses, they've got solar, they've got ground source heating, blah, blah, blah. Is that achievable in something like a hospital or a school? I mean, I would assume it's a much bigger challenge, that.
Oh, it's absolutely achievable with regards to hospitals and schools. It's the same portfolio of technologies, there's the solar, it's the heat pumps, it's incorporating the storage. But with regards to a new building, you have the opportunity to make it very, very easy to heat. There's some very stupid things that have been done over the years. Yes. Very leaky buildings that actually solar gain is quite a significant one, so too hot rather than too cold. So just applying these sensible techniques, first of all, massively reduces your problem. Then with these clean technologies, you can, in most cases, eliminate the draw off the grid, and then once you start getting into detail, you can trade between buildings and so forth. So absolutely applicable to most building types. I wouldn't say all new building types. Probably you can find examples where it doesn't quite work, but in aggregate, it absolutely works. And then there's the whole challenge of retrofit as well to address.
But I mean, one of the things I was thinking, just from my standpoint, is communicating this sort of thing to the wider world. And I suddenly thought when you were talking, and what a different approach that was, and the idea of modular and constructed buildings that you reproduce again and again. It's so obvious that in terms of cost saving and environmental cost saving, the advantage of that. Then I thought, what do we all watch on telly about building? Grand designs, where every single building is usually a retired architect who's got 3 million quid, and then there's some jeopardy, and is the wife going to leave him, and is it going to rain when they're trying to put the roof on? But they're totally individual buildings, completely not what you're talking about. I mean, massively inefficient, carbon intensive monstrosities 9 times out of 10.
Well, I'm not so negative about grand designs, I would say. But I think, with regards to a building, it's generally 80% of it can be standardized very comfortably. And, we're working with various developers, house builders and so forth. And, I have asked the question, what do your customers prefer? What do the customers think about the one or the other? And the answer is, mostly they don't even know. And all they care about is that their buildings are comfortable and attractive and work well. And we absolutely know that the techniques to achieve those outcomes are the techniques I've described. What I wouldn't for a moment want to undermine the sort of value of architects and architecture in this, but let's not have architects reinvent everything all the time. Let's get certain things really honed and right, and then apply the skills to placemaking and fitting into an environment in a beautiful way, and get away from this grunt work, frankly.
Right. I mean, I'd very much like to open up to questions for Sam from anyone. Oh, there's one straight away. We wait for them. The microphone is on its way.
My name is Nikki Boring. I'm the editor of Business Innovation magazine. I wrote a few months ago, a feature on net zero homes. I interviewed a couple of mid-sized developers, and they both said, one was in Gloucestershire and one was in Oxfordshire, they both said they desperately want to do the right thing, but they're said people didn't any government standards by which they could work. One of them particularly was very keen to do it, says they are going out on a limb and doing what they think in building new homes in the right way. But they said that the playing field isn't level because the bigger developers are still not doing it. They're still not building homes for purpose, but they're still not building good quality, sustainable homes. When do you feel the government will actually, when will you be able to roll out standards so that everybody's working at the same level?
It's certainly not up to me to do it. I am a passionate advocate of doing that, of having really strict standards. I think that there was, I think the coalition government in about 2012 relaxed the standards, and I think that was a terrific shame. I think they were got to by a very small number of lobbyists who had disproportionate influence there. I think the vast majority of the industry really, as you say, wants to do the right thing, knows that it's possible to do the right thing, but it is impossible to compete most of the time if there are not strict regulations and not enforced regulations. So, I think it's incumbent on all of us with any influence at all to say it's feasible and right, and actually there's a massive groundswell of support for strict regulations. So we're not quite there yet. It seems, the mood music is pretty good, but we can't count our chickens yet.
I mean, it is a fascinating aspect of the worlds that I inhabit: automotive, renewables, the fossil fuel industry. As we've just heard today, the news just came out today of some leaked papers. I don't know how many of you have seen this, which is the lobbying done by Australia, Saudi Arabia, Russia, to hold back any possible change. Don't make us stop using fossil fuel. Hang on a minute, these are too strident, these changes, and that clearly happens in the building industry as well, and it definitely happens in the automotive industry without question.
Yeah, I mean, it's a form of corruption, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. Anyway, I want to get another question. This gentleman here, please.
Very interesting to hear about the move towards improving the design process. One of the things that I've heard in the past is that the evaluation of actually how the buildings perform once they're occupied the end user doesn't always match up to what was put on the tin, up to 300% difference when it comes to energy performance. How does that fit in your scenario?
Well, part of it is actually finding out how well these technologies work in practice, and we're going a long way towards that with actually we've got 3 demonstrator homes here at the Active Building Centre on site here. So I think that's been a considerable gap. It's just I don't think people have had the wrong intents generally in the industry, but I don't think there's been enough testing and configuration done. So it's not like the Volkswagen scandal where they were testing things in unrealistic environments, but I just think there wasn't enough testing going on. So I think that's a big part of it. And I think the other thing is, again, I'd be a considerable advocate of moving towards actually much more comprehensive testing of buildings in use and learning the lessons from that. And I think part of collecting that data and assessing that data will be to help educate the users of buildings, and not in a way that inconveniences them, just to sort of say, some people probably don't realise that if you turn the heating up full blast and open all the windows, it might not be that efficient. There are some very basic things there as well. But this performance gap, I'm well aware of it, and I think we're doing things that will address it. Yeah.
And we've got time for one more question. Yes, sir, at the back here.
Hi, a lot of questions. With a lot of the buildings got all resistance. How does that translate into that?
Well, the brief of the construction sector deal and the Transforming Construction Challenge was essentially to go at new buildings primarily, and I think that's really, the logic of that is really, we've got to start somewhere, and it's relatively more easier to address new buildings. But the reality of it is that a good deal, I don't know how to say most, but a good deal of what we're doing and developing is equally applicable to existing buildings, is equally applicable to retrofit. So the clean technologies, absolutely. I mean, we're all familiar with the idea of solar panels and heat pumps and so forth as a retrofit solution. So that absolutely makes sense. In terms of industrializing and standardizing, it's a little bit harder, but I think the same approaches can apply. And I think, I'm very impatient with the industry. I want to see the industry moving quickly to these standardized approaches. But I think because we'll be doing it with new buildings, it starts to get people thinking along the right lines, and then you start to sort of get people thinking, so, okay, if we've got to retrofit 100,000 homes of that particular type, how do we set up an efficient program to do that, rather than saying, right, there's that house tomorrow and that house the next day, and that's not going to be efficient. But if you categorize all this, if you get the typology right, and then get relatively standardized solutions for the different typologies, then I think you can be much more efficient about it. So there's a long way we can go, but we're not quite as far on with the retrofit challenge as we are with the new buildings.
Sam, I'm sorry, we're going to have to finish there. Ladies and gentlemen, will you please give a very warm round of appreciative thanks to Sam Stacey. Thank you very much for that. Really good, really interesting. We've got a short break now, and then there's going to be another panel here, and there are 2 other panels going on in the other buildings around the corner. And what else have I got to do? I've got to say something else that's really important. I can't remember, but there's something. But just have a wonderful time, and you're all lovely. I think that's probably the most important part. And we'll see you in a bit. Thank you very much.
Thanks, everyone.